This is the Shattering the Taboo podcast. Let's change the paradigm together. With your host, Bebe Chez.
All right, welcome to another episode. And today we'll be talking about something I think very interesting, and I highly recommend that you pay attention. We'll probably take a little break and maybe do a breathing exercise, get you guys recharged, refocused. We'll be talking about ways in which you can boost anandamide. We'll talk about what anandamide is, how is it your endogenous antidepressant, and I think it's overall going to be a great conversation. If anybody here wants to ask any question, feel free to raise your hand and then comment away. I'm sure there'll be questions. All right, so this is something that I've actually been working on for a long time. I became very interested at a young age, first on like the chemistry of nutrition and how it interacted with our genes for health. Then I went into a more psychological phase when I was getting my PhD in neuroscience. And I started to study the chemistry of well-being, the chemistry of just feeling good. And so we're going to share some really interesting concepts here that I think are going to hopefully blow your mind in terms of the potential already existent within you. So let's begin by something important, which is the idea that happiness is created. And welcome, whoever coming in now, Nomadic Living. Thank you for, let me give you a follow. I noticed you were following me. Thank you for being here. Firstly, the idea is that happiness is created, something within you, and you can sustain it through the cultivation of the right habits. If you were to stop and really assess the way that, you know, like the things, the experiences that you have in life, the way that you think, your patterns, your thought patterns in particular, you're going to notice that a lot of the things that we do on a day-to-day basis get in the way of my ability to sustain and feel happy. Now, let me bump up the Sanjay there. And again, if anybody wants to come up, if I say anything that piques your interest, you want to ask a question or comment, feel free. I'm glad that you're here. High value stuff. You'll really enjoy it. So I'm glad you are here. Dare I add? Let's see. I might have to then go back. Hopefully this is not one of those Twitter. Sachi, go ahead. Do you have a question? You just joined.
Hey, what's up, man? I'm just here to support you guys. I'm actually really curious about this. So, ways to boost your anandamide. Is that how you say it?
Anandamide. Ananda means bliss. It's Sanskrit for bliss. It's actually an endogenous peptide. You can think of it like a small signaling protein that you have already within you, the chemistry for feeling good, for elevated mood, for low pain,
So is it,
for just a state of well-being and bliss.
how is
So
it?
we're going to talk about how you enhance that.
How is it different from like serotonin and dopamine?
Well, all of these signaling molecules, if tuned the right way, will induce either better focus, greater motivation, greater drive, feelings of pleasure, depending on the neurochemical. Remember, when you say you feel good, there is a chemistry associated with it. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through and I'm going to give you some ways in which you can better activate these pathways and better sustain a state of well-being. That's what we're going to do.
Cool. Perfect.
All right. So if you have questions, just in terms of how it follows, just raise your hand. I'll stop my train of thought and then I'll give you a chance to ask away. All right. So, everybody, thank you for being here. It will be high value, I promise, and we'll probably do practice a breathing technique or something at some point soon. All right, so let's first go into anandamide. And again, I love how people just jump on just to, I don't know why people do that, but I think that's the Twitter algorithm that just does that. All right, so again, let me say something so I can start getting in a rhythm because I work better in a rhythm. I'm not gonna be taking anybody up yet, Eco Sapien. If you want, just stay because you just joined, so you can kind of get in the flow and see what the talk is about, what have you. We just started. Thank you for being here. Because typically, people who just join and request, it doesn't usually go well, in my experience. All right, so just sit comfy, and it'll be worth your time. All right, so let me just try to get in a groove here first, and then we'll start taking some questions. All right, so I've actually been thinking about this a lot. The NFT crypto space, this digital era we're moving into, can be very problematic for happiness and well being. Because a lot of times our activities are not conducive to happiness and well being. The way that we're thinking, we may be feeling anxious, doubtful, worried. And I was talking to somebody privately who is going to be taking a break for a couple of weeks from the space. They have a project that they're trying to build, and they're having a lot of issues. And we often allow life to change us, to change the way we're interacting with it, to change our mindset. And this starts to change my neurochemistry and sends me spiraling down away from a state of happiness or well-being. When we say happiness and well-being, the word that kind of encompasses both is bliss. So a blissful state is a state of happiness and well-being. And of course, we have to do the things that get us there. So for example, we'll go through some as we go listing, but if I'm not eating the right way, the chemistry of my brain will not be conducive. Oh, cool. Let's bring up Alpha Trader. By the way, if you guys don't know about Alpha Traders, check it out. Really, really cool project. Really love them. Super professional. Great alpha, not just in crypto NFTs, but also in the stock market and doing a lot of amazing stuff. The art is super cool too. All right, so if I don't eat the right way, my brain chemistry will not support a state of well-being and happiness. If I'm not thinking the right way, if I'm not listening to the right music in the company of the right people, being inspired, motivated is important. Think about if one of you have ever been to, I don't know, like a Tony Robbins seminar or something, somebody really inspiring, where you just sit there and you almost feed off that person and they're getting you to think a different way. You're strategizing, you're planning. It really changes the game in terms of your overall state of well-being. But of course, we then go back to old habits, and every day we wake up and we relive the same programs that we've been reliving on a day-to-day basis for weeks, months, or years. And of course, if anybody has any questions or comments, just raise your hand. I'll stop whatever train of thought, and then you can jump in. All right, so you have genes that play a role for happiness. So, for example, scientists found that there are certain nations that actually scored higher in happiness. Oddly enough, I'm from Puerto Rico originally, and Puerto Rico is one of I think way back when, I don't know about now, but way back when scored the highest of all. The happiest people were in Puerto Rico. And so there's certain nations that score higher because they share the same genetic mutation. And then the question is, what is that mutation? And that mutation involved, interestingly, the signaling of an endocannabinoid that is the topic of today called anandamide, or the blissful amide. An amide is a peptide, like a short little protein. And I've mentioned this before, so if you're new to one of my spaces, you set the stage by the way that you think and live. Your mindset, your emotional state, your mental state, your activities, your habits, etc., are changing your brainwave activity. We live mostly in a state of brainwave activity that is not conducive to health and well-being, which is the beta, high beta state. High beta is more like anxiety, stress. Beta would be like what you are right now. But there is a way actually to move into a slower brainwave activity without getting drowsy, losing consciousness like we normally do, and activate and awaken greater creativity, productivity, and power, and shift you from beta activity into gamma, which is what you see often, for example, with like Buddhist monks that have been practicing meditation for many years. They can almost at will get into this particular state. This state is what's known as the flow state. And so this is why I developed a program called How to Turn Stress into Flow. Because when you look at the neurochemistry of stress, very, very similar to the chemistry of well-being, of bliss, of flow. The problem is that stress is me allowing the power of my chemistry to run rampant without control. My energy goes all over the place. Sometimes I don't realize it, and all of a sudden I start holding the energy in certain parts. And that person that I talked about earlier, that's taking a break from the space, that's really struggling right now, is storing the energy in particular parts of his body that are causing pain. And so I was giving him some advice on how he could go about this. And so let's go into this anandamide. So if anybody has a question, remember, raise your hand. Feel free. This is intended to be more conversational than just me going at it. But, sometimes if you enjoy it, then just sit back, relax. Remember, meditation means, and I'll be doing my daily wisdom today, so pay attention to my daily wisdom today because it'll be very relevant to this. You are meditating right now, but you don't realize it. And it's not until you're fully awakened that you realize that the entire world is your meditation. Nature is an eternal expression of this meditation. And so what I want you to learn is to sit, to be more passive, to cultivate humility, which leads to greater opening and allows you to then admire those that have qualities that you may want as well, where you find yourself always in rooms where you're looking up at the people in the room, admiring them and allowing the light that they are trying to give you to come in. So you want to sit and be receptive. And so going back to idea of happiness, having a mutation that may do this. This is actually very interesting because in psychiatry in particular, the pharmaceutical industry is very non-specific. This is why it has so many side effects, because these drugs not only do what they're intended, but they bind to other protein receptors in your body, throughout your body, many cells, and can cause many symptoms. And so if you look at, for example, areas like drugs of abuse, some people are actually more susceptible to becoming addicted than others because they have mutations that change the way that they interact with the chemicals that the drug acts on. So, for example, cocaine can block the ability of your cells to take the dopamine back in, allowing the dopamine to stay outside the cell, transmitting signals that can boost, for example, pleasure, motivation, motor function. And so, but there are people actually that have the protein that takes the dopamine back into cells, they have a different version some people that don't work well and some people that does work well, and this actually changes the way that you would treat them. So in the future, drug treatments need to evolve to the point where they take into consideration certain genetic differences that exist within us. It is not all about genes. In fact, most is not about your genes. Remember, the DNA is the software of life. However, like software in a computer, you could be a nutcakes with a computer and not get much out of the computer. You're not really getting much out of it. Like I think about like my mother-in-law using the iPhone, and she's very basic her use of it. But you take somebody who's a little bit more versed, they're gonna get more out of the DNA than somebody else. This is the whole concept of DNA hacking that I teach another, later on, and that's where I teach how you can kind of do this, take stake over your DNA. So this mutation allows cells to produce less of an enzyme that breaks down anandamide. So some people produce more of an enzyme that makes them more apt to be maybe a little bit more gloom and doom, more apt to lean towards the sad side or the taking things on a more negative mindset, you could say. And so, however, this does not necessarily mean that they can't change that they can't change themselves neurochemically. Let me give you an example. Let's take attention. Some people have good attention. Some people have poor attention. Some people are good at math. Some people are not. Some people read well. Some don't. Everybody's good at certain things and not so good at others. And that doesn't mean that I'm less because I don't do something well that somebody else does. So you want to kind of take that into consideration. So some people don't attend well. However, if they practice mindfulness or meditation, which is one of the things that actually would boost anandamide, you can change your chemistry to fine tune it so that your attention is actually better. So, for example, if you take a little kid, this is why attention deficit and Asperger type C, autism spectrum is so high. It's due to technology, to exposure of young children to very stimulating technology that's meant to hook people. It's meant to have an addictive effect. It's very stimulating in terms of the cues that the nervous system gets, bright lights, sounds, etc. Games are designed like that. And what do you think happens? What does that do to the brain? It's almost like I'm giving my brain a drug fix. I'm giving it a huge boost of a chemical. I'm entraining the brain to require a strong stimuli to be able to attend. So now you put a kid like that in a classroom. What are they not able to do? They're not able to really focus because the classroom has these boring walls, maybe a boring teacher, a subject that they're not interested in, that doesn't meet their needs, their goals, their aspirations. This is why education needs to be streamlined to accelerate our growth rather than stunt it and just basically be like a machine to put people into the industrial, kind of pipeline that exists right now that serves the minority rather than the majority. So in the same way that there may be people that are less likely to be happy, this could be a product of many things, not just genetics. It could be product of my upbringing, a traumatic experience, many things, or my own way of going about interacting with the world. So, for example, when I teach about stress is something that you create. It's not something outside of you. There's nothing that causes stress. You create it. And in the same way that you can create stress, anxiety, depression, you can create bliss. So anandamide is like your very own version of cannabis. There's your very own version of Prozac, like so-called mood elevator. But in fact, actually, Prozac doesn't really work. It's almost, I would say, 100% placebo for the majority of the population, because most depression is not mediated by what that drug acts on. And studies, I think, out of Harvard showed that. All right, so anandamide is this kind of like your own cannabis. Cannabis is produced on demand and is quickly broken down by that enzyme that some people have a mutation that doesn't work as well and doesn't break down the anandamide. So they're more able to, when they turn on and release anandamide, to be able to feel better more regularly. So this actually makes sense that people who have less active enzyme would have higher endogenous activation of what are called the endocannabinoid system. So something like cannabis, or like not just the cannabis that gets you high, but the cannabis that's like more of like the holistic health one, the one associated with CBD. That type of cannabis plant also acts through this system. This is why they're heavily researched now in terms of psychiatry and treatment, because they act on these pathways that all mammals have. It's almost as if the endocannabinoid system is some ancient civilization, very advanced, designed this plant. They developed 100%, I'm telling you right now, 100% was created by a civilization that wanted to enhance our states of well-being and higher and enhance our states of consciousness. So keep that in mind as we go through. So subjects' enhanced levels of happiness are a result of having what? More anandamide. And the receptor that anandamide binds to in cells is the same exact one that THC of marijuana binds to, by the way, FYI. That means that I can, by myself, activate this pathway. So let's look at this endocannabinoid system in terms of mental health and mental well-being. So the cannabinoids, remember, are spread out not just through your nervous system, but they're also spread out in your immune system. So they can have like immune boosting effects as well. But one of the issues is that people don't dose it correctly. This is something that's actually going to change as all of this becomes more mainstream, and there's a merging between politics and medicine, and it opens the door now to really regulate things better, to people have access to care. The metaverse is going to be important. I've talked about that in other spaces, where we're going to be able to do, like, for example, psychedelic mediated therapy in the metaverse, which is an interesting area. And so anandamide, other anandamide-like chemicals are what scientists call homeostatic regulators. They are, when I teach like a nutrition master class, and in it, I teach this type of herbs that you can take, certain supplements that have this effect as well. It has a specific name that you would call this homeostatic effect that makes you resistant to, for example, stress. So, in other words, these type of cannabinoid receptors work to keep you in a state of homeostatic balance and also harmony. So you're feeling better. You can actually, by the way that you think and act, really change your brainwave activity to stimulate the release of the right peptides that will enhance this state. So anandamide, when released, will help maintain mental stability. And in fact, it can actually even reduce psychotic incidents and reverse depressive-like behaviors. But of course, if somebody is deficient in it, then they're going to have difficulty. This is why cannabis, for many people, they'll tell you that they feel better when they, smoke, a joint or something, because it is enhancing the release of a neural pathway that helps to elevate their mood and their feelings of overall well-being. Of course, some of these signaling pathways also modulate pain. That's why, like a football player would find it useful as well. And so, this is important for the system, actually, is very important for our ability to tolerate stress and decrease fear and anxiety. This is why cultivating these better states of kind of like better mental states and emotional states of being can be almost like a buffer that can buffer you from explosive emotional responses. There was actually a study in from Cornell University that showed that a decrease in the expression of that enzyme I mentioned earlier in mice, and also it's like you you take the variant, the genetic mutation, that variant that you find in the human, and you're able to knock it in. You're able to put it into the mouse to take their regular enzyme and replace it with this human version that doesn't work as well, and you end up seeing similar effects. So, very interestingly, it enhances frontal lobe function, which is right behind the front forehead, that part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, which is important for inhibiting impulse control and inhibiting emotional kind of behaviors. It keeps you a lot more focused. Meditation enhances this part of the brain. And especially if you take meditation more from a concentration standpoint, where you're trying to enhance your concentration, it will definitely do this. Those mice that are genetically modified to kind of mimic these humans that are happier actually have enhanced frontal lobe function, and they're able to like extinguish fear responses. And so what I found, for example, in that individual that I mentioned earlier that reached out to me through Discord, uh, I told him, you're living in fear. You're living with doubt because of your project not maybe meeting expectations, because of something, other things that are happening in his real life. That state that we get into, if not stopped, if you persist in that state, can have very destructive effects because you're releasing neuropeptides that are changing you first genetically. This will then manifest at a biochemical level, at a like anatomical level. It's a lot of different physical, it translates over into many areas of our life that will then affect our health, maybe tension, pain, even disease. So you want to keep that in mind. That's why when I teach programs about stress freedom, I teach in like almost like intervening in increments, micro practices. This is why I did that tweet recently about how to start your day. If you didn't see it, go search my thread. Every day, especially on work days, start your day the way that I described in that tweet. Because one of the things that I put there was to plan your day every day. Just kind of think about, okay, I'm going to be doing this, 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 and this. And within that day, there has to be time for you. Time for you to reset, break patterns so that you don't accumulate and build, let's say, stress hormones or something of that sort. All right. Before I continue, anybody want to chime in? Have any questions? Anybody else listening want to come up while I take a sip of water? All right. Apparently, it's going well. People are pumped. By the way, if I feel in doubt as whether this is going well, I just need to look at the Sungen profile pics, and that just makes me happy. I'm like, crap, I'm doing well. They look really happy.
I had a question for you. I was
Sure.
going to ask about the flow state that you mentioned earlier. Is that the same flow state that is spoken about in musicians when they get into that creative mindset and something just turns on in their brain and they're able to write music a lot more efficiently and be more creative?
Yes, it's almost as if you're shifting your brainwave activity more into an alpha state, more into like a daydreamy state. If you notice, try to practice this. When you wake up, don't ever wake up and immediately get going. Wake up and remain perfectly still and observe what you're going to feel. try to think about something that you've been trying to solve. You're going to notice that your ability to imagine is a lot stronger. When you concentrate on something, it almost like the image appears almost like crystal clear. You can even notice how this energy of consciousness comes back because it vacates the nervous system to the level of the medulla oblongata. And then it starts to seep back in, and you're going to start to feel, as you become more aware of it, this kind of tingling. Take advantage of those times when you find yourself really relaxed, because those are sacred times that often during the day you don't have. And so oftentimes an artist may get into a particular state where they just really get into a groove. They're really feeling good. They're feeling in the moment, and they don't want to break it, so they just go through it. But you have to be very careful because the flow state, just like stress, is very energy intensive. And so if I go on a 2 to 3 hour run, I need to afterwards really take a significant break and do practices that empower me again. If my diet is off, toxic is going to affect me. If I don't know how to breathe well, a lot of times, I find that artists have their ability to kind of be in that middle road. They tend to be very polarizing. So they'll be in really highs or really lows. And so that's something that I have to work with, like artists specifically, so that they learn how to be able to tap into that flow state in a more of a middle road, like a Zen road, where they don't push themselves to certain extremes. The other thing is they're very open. And one of the things, if anybody here is an artist, never spend time in the flow state like that, where you're seated, you're kind of almost in the clouds. You're like connected to something greater. And then all of a sudden get up and start interacting with other people, with the world. Because you're going to be like this open filter, very open. And you're going to take in a lot of things from the environment that could be detrimental to you if you're very sensitive. So be very mindful of that. First, close yourself, center yourself, do something grounding, maybe some Tai Chi or some yoga, go for a walk in nature, really get yourself back, or a run or something like that. Something that gets you really grounded, and then go interact with people. It will help you a lot. All right, so let's see. Let's go through some things that can help you. But before we do, let's actually practice that breathing technique from last time. I don't know, not everybody was here last time, but it's always good to practice things we learned to consolidate them. So some people here, I think, may be new. So I'm gonna give you the breathing technique real quick, and then we're gonna do like 3 or 5 rounds, and then I'm gonna give you implementation. So what you're gonna notice is that typically when I do events like this, I give you a background so that you understand why. Why does it matter to you? And then that will, once you understand the why, you're more likely to want to do it. If you don't know why you're doing something, it's probably not going to be sustained long term. Once you understand why, then you need to learn how you in your life you can implement a better state of well-being. How can you change your neurochemistry, for example, for the better? All right, so let's take a quick break. If you're seated, stand up if you can. If you're driving, then you may not be able to partake in this, but you can still do the breathing exercise. Just make sure to, not kind of lose yourself. Again, like last time, I want you to get into what's called hero's pose. So you're just going to be standing, and your arms are going to be extended in the shape of a Y. Think of almost like YMCA. So you're going to have your arms extended like a Y. And this opening, remember I explained last time, is associated psychologically. You're communicating to your body something very strong and important. You're communicating that everything is safe, your chest is open, you're exposing your entire rib cage and your chest out into the world. Normally, you extend your arms, try to keep the arms in a Y shape, and breathe as I'm talking. And when you extend your arms like this, when is it? You're doing it. It's also called victory pose. And you do it usually when you're running and you're victorious. You extend your arm. Think of a runner about to cross the finish line. You also extend your arms like this when you open your heart to a loved one to hug them, right before you hug them. So psychologically, remember, a lot of times we turn on neurochemistry of disease and dysregulation because we communicate with our body the wrong way. So you can actually communicate with your body a different way by changing your relationship with that body. Your posture can be very important for that, because if I open the chest, that's a vulnerable position. So there's certain like therapeutic yoga poses, for example, that can do this. So remember, if anything piques your interest, let me know, direct message or something, and I can do a specific spaces on this. It will also be part of the project that I'm, working to launch down the road. So it's going to be very comprehensive. All right, so drop your arms, and now sit down, and we're going to do a sequence. I'm going to tell you a sequence real quick, and then we're going to do it. It's inhale through the nose, and then exhale through the nose. And then we're going to inhale, pucker lips, and then we exhale with the relaxed mouth. When you inhale with pucker lips, the air feels cool. It's an air that calms the fire of agitation and anxiety and stress. It's calming. It's a calming breath. And so you want to, almost like if you're giving a kiss or whistling, you breathe in air that way, and it should feel cool. You exhale, relax mouth. Then you inhale through the nose, exhale, relax mouth. And that exhale through a relaxed mouth, mentally give a sigh, almost like a ah sound, almost like you're letting go. That sigh that you may do when you're frustrated, where you go, ah, that type of sigh, that's how it should be, that air. Almost like mentally letting go of whatever is troubling you. And then inhale through pucker lips, exhale through the nose. So we start with the nose and end with the nose. So we're going to do it. If you're interested in an infographic, I don't know if we ever put it anywhere, Alex, but if you want, if I shared it with you, you can put it up in, I think you have like a mental wellness channel or something. You could put maybe like a sub channel there, maybe name it something, and then we can start putting like little resources there, like curated, not just random stuff. So we can put a little infographic there. There's a hand posture that you do in this breathing technique, but we're not going to do it. All right. So sit. Try to have your eyes either closed or half open. Obviously, if you're driving, don't close your eyes. Hopefully, you're not driving. And your eyes are closed or half closed. They could be gazing somewhere at a point in space, the tip of your nose. If they're closed, focus on the space in between your eyebrows. And we're going to exhale completely. Inhale through the nose. Exhale through the nose. Inhale, puckered lips. Exhale, relax mouth. Inhale through the nose. Exhale, relax mouth. And make that exhale long and smooth. Inhale, puckered lips. Exhale through the nose. Inhale through the nose. Exhale through the nose. Inhale, puckered lips. Exhale, relax mouth. Inhale through the nose. Exhale, relax mouth. Inhale, puckered lips. Exhale through the nose. Inhale through the nose. Exhale through the nose. Inhale, pucker lips. Exhale, relax mouth. Inhale through the nose. Exhale, relax mouth. Inhale, puckered lips. Exhale through the nose. Let's do it one more time. Inhale through the nose. Exhale through the nose. Inhale, pucker lips. Exhale, relax mouth. Inhale through the nose. Exhale, relax mouth. Inhale, pucker lips. Exhale through the nose. And I'm telling you, I don't care what state you're in. You do that for 5 to 10 minutes, it will transform your state of being. You will not be in the same state you were before. I can even feel it just by doing 4 rounds. I can notice my eyes have a tendency to want to be half open, almost like if I'm in a state of a natural high of sorts. You'll feel a certain difference in your brain. You'll feel maybe more focused, a lot calmer. You'll be able to think a little clearer because you've dissipated the agitation that was causing your train of thoughts to be scattered. This is actually reflected in your brainwave activity. Your brain becomes very incoherent. There's a lot more activity, but it's very noisy. One area may be up and one may be down. They're not working together in synchrony like they would, for example, in that kind of gamma state that is kind of like a higher functioning state, you could say. All right, let's go through some tips here. Unless anybody has any questions or comments, feel free to raise your hand. All right. So one of the first things is, not surprisingly, I talk about this in the Art of Stress-Free Living in my book, is a diet. Diet is important. Diet is not just important for your kind of physical well-being. People always think about diet more from like, oh, I'll be healthier, I'll live longer, I won't get sick as much, what have you. But really, diet has effects at a psychological level. And one of the reasons is because food is chemistry. And what drives your brain activity? Chemistry. So in the same way that from the subtle, you create matter, I go from a mental state, which is not physical. I generate a neurobiological state of activity that releases neuropeptides and chemicals throughout my brain and body, and that can impact my health and my well-being. In the same way, from the outside in, I can put stuff in my body that can set the stage for enhanced, let's say, endocannabinoid health. So one of the single most important elements is the food that you eat. Just as a quick note for you, if you're taking notes, the best recommendation I can make there that's quick to the point is build to make sure that at least 50% of all you eat, half of what you eat, is whole plant-based foods that are raw, live, intact, exactly as Mother Nature offers them to you. The moment that you alter it, you alter its chemistry and it doesn't interact with your body well, even if it's plant-based. Your body responds to cooked food as if there were a pathogen. Literally, your immune system becomes activated. There's inflammation. And of course, if it's not plant-based, and if it's not altered even more, fried foods, foods cooked twice, dead foods, things of that nature, it's even worse. So you want to be mindful with that. Remember, if I cultivate a state of nurturing my body, my being, remember, you want to, I have a really nice story. Maybe we can do a story hour one day. And I'll read you a story I wrote that's in an unpublished book called Voice to God, where I teach this concept on you must make your body like your temple. Build it. be very mindful of what you put into your conscious space, not just in diet. It's not about just the food that you eat, but what are you feeding your mind? What are you putting into your heart on a day-to-day basis? Are you living your dream? Are you living your dharma? Are you pouring out and serving others? I had the conversation with Alex the other day, like how much he's aligned with his dharma right now, and it's all like focused on serving and building and doing what he's meant to do in this world. Because a lot of times, if we don't, then it just throws us off, and we're not going to feel right if we're not doing that. So, diet, of course, you want it to be. Why is that type of food good? Because it's superfood. It's low calorie, but it's superfood because it's rich in nutrient dense. And of course, I talked about this in other spaces. It's prebiotic fiber, which means it's food for your microbiome, the microorganisms that live throughout your digestive system that are also important for your mental health. And if you're interested in that topic, I could do another spaces in that again on that topic. It's a really interesting topic. So highly recommend that you take that into consideration. The more you love, honor, and respect your body by giving it the right chemical cocktail, really, the better you're going to feel. You're going to start to activate a different neurochemical signaling pathway, healthier gene expression that's associated with what? Detox. Literally, there's the foods that you eat can activate detox genes, for example, in your liver. Health, well-being, happiness. My schedule does this as well. I talk about natural cycles, how we're out of cycle in natural rhythms, and we don't sleep during a period where we detox and heal the most. So that's another, on a side note. Another thing, of course, when we talked about earlier that anandamide is really part of our endogenous endocannabinoid system, the part that the cannabinoid type plants activate, CBD supplementation can help. So like that, the hemp plant, which is an amazing plant, it's such a holistic plant that for so many different uses, it's incredible. The technology there, you can see what a high civilization created that. But the key here is to again get it as close to what Mother Nature would offer it to you. The best way to absorb it really is oil-based. It's for most high plant-based healing components, even things like turmeric, which is very popular now, require an oil substrate to be absorbed. So a lot of times, if you like to take, this is a tip for like nutrition-wise, if you like to consume like healthy stuff in the morning, let's say make a smoothie with fresh fruit and good stuff, and you put like good nutrition in it, make sure maybe to put some medium chain triglyceride oil, which is found in like coconut oil, or you could do coconut oil. And there's a specific oil. If you send me a direct message, I'll find it. That it's very expensive though. The research has shown like incredible healing results. And I'm gonna have to really think about this because it was a while ago. But if you're interested, I can tell you it's a really interesting oil supplement. All right. People can take other types of oils. Like a lot of times when you deliver stuff like algal oil would be great. I would take algal oil instead of fish oil. And that has to do with eco-wellness. I've talked about that in other spaces for environmental reasons. And because the health benefits are the same than taking fish oil without environmental impact. So CBD actually, working with other phytocannabinoids, will work synergistically to boost that type of pathway. If somebody were to want to use the other cannabis plant, the one with THC, then again, that one, the key here is again, dosing is the key. And oftentimes people don't dose it correctly. They are overdosing is the problem. But I'm not going to talk about that today, but if you're interested in that topic, then we can talk about it at some other point or at the end. There's something called PEA. I'm not even going to try to tell you what it stands for. It's a very long chemical name. And this is found in your body and enhances anandamide activity. This is normally produced by your body to reduce inflammation. So oddly enough, this is very interesting that the same chemistry associated with feeling good is associated with anti-inflammation. It's anti-inflammatory. What is one of the silent killers of generation along with stress? Inflammation. What is associated with neurodegeneration like Alzheimer's? Inflammation. And the list goes on and on. What's associated with high animal-based diet? Inflammation. So things that harm the planet are associated with negative mental and physical states. They increase without you realizing it. If I am not, this is why I teach eco wellness, if I don't live the right way, aligned with the world, with nature, with the universe, I'm not acting in a way that serves the majority rather than myself, it causes pain and suffering. If I cause pain and suffering, it will cause pain and suffering within me. It starts to change my gene expression without me realizing. It's very subtle, and it starts at that kind of vibratory level that trickles into my brain, trickles into my neurochemistry, and impacts my entire physiology. Really mind-blowing stuff. So you have to think about this. Sculpt yourself to a perfected being and never stop, and just keep pushing yourself to be better every day, to love more every day, to be more patient every day, to focus more on providing value to the world rather than looking to receive value from others. And that's something that I admire about this, the Sungens project, is that I see that, a community where people are focused on providing value, real value, rather than saying you're going to do something and you're really not going to deliver anything you say you're going to do. That's why anybody that knows anybody knows that most of these projects are going to zero. I may invest in some just for purely flipping purposes, take advantage of the FOMO and profit, but I don't hold them long term. I want to sleep at night. That's another thing, by the way, in terms of NFT crypto, seeing that some of you, most of you are, if not all of you are in this space, is you really have to take time away from that space because it can be very destructive. The being on Discord so long, seeing the highs and lows of the market, a missed opportunity. You start finding yourself thinking the wrong way. Oh, I sold at 0.5 and it went up to 1 ETH. I missed out. Rather than focus on the fact that you bought it for 0.05 and you sold it 10x, you focus on the fact that you didn't get 1 ETH, you only got 0.5. So like reshifting the way you think about your life, like there's a lot more good things about your life than you think. So this is why I did a tweet recently, find it in my daily wisdom, where I talked about that. Try to do it and practice it for days, a few weeks, and you're going to notice that if you keep working at thinking positively, it becomes a habit. You find yourself almost like having created a barrier against negative mindset. So another thing, of course, is at least 30 minutes of exercise. This is like, you think about like the so-called like runner's high. And I have somebody in the space who's not here, but I work with him privately. He has his own project and he loves to run and he does it every day. And I personally do not recommend running from a kind of joint standpoint. It can catch up to you over time. Your body's not really meant for running the way that people run. If you run the right way, it could, and on the right surface. But the so-called like runner's high is mediated by the release of pain-suppressing endorphins, chemicals that the pharmaceutical industry tried to mimic by creating pain medications. This is why there's no technology, nothing that the pharmaceutical industry or any technology can ever give you that you don't already have. Because they all study what you have and then they try to enhance it chemically. But the problem is that they typically enhance it at levels that are outside the norm. They are almost like overdosing people. And then what this creates is your cells stop producing it. And it creates a greater, almost like tolerance to the drug. And I've seen this with kids since I've worked with younger generation for many years, and many of which suffer from attention deficit. If they've taken medication, their dose now is much, much higher than it was way before. Their brain just slowly acclimates and requires more of that kind of boost or that juice to get going. And that can be very detrimental in the long term because it's not sustainable. The only thing that you can sustain is practicing it on a day-to-day basis. Like we talked about earlier with like meditation, how it rewires your circuitry and your chemical pathways so that you actually boost your attention. You literally see this in the way that your brain is kind of connected, and the chemicals that are being secreted are secreted into your frontal lobe, into your prefrontal cortex the right way, so that you concentrate better, can actually do work in memory, which is the memory that you use to bring into the present to be able to read, think, plan, etc. That's what makes us human. But more often than not, we don't have a frontal lobe that works well, and we're not at our optimal. That's what stress does to us, the high beta activity. If we learned how to be conscious in slower and slower brainwave activity, which, by the way, slower brainwave activity is equal to higher states of consciousness, just so that you know. It is also equal into the dream world. Lucid dreaming is also equal to spiritual realms that you don't experience, that are overlapping, almost like a multiverse, you could say, intertangled with this one. And so the more I get accustomed to getting myself into a different state of being, I will be able to persist in it for longer, and I will be able to enjoy the flow state. But of course, as we talked about earlier, this is very energy intensive. We need to nurture our body the right way, whether it's food or other activities. So exercise again. Oh, actually, exercise is interesting because there is evidence that the endocannabinoid system, not just the endorphin, the pain pathway, including anandamide, are the main agents behind that kind of sensation that you feel when you're doing something that you enjoy, whether it's exercise or something else. It's associated with you like getting yourself into a state that allows you to feel good. However, I should mention, we need to stop making that state contingent on us being in a certain place or doing certain things or having certain things. We often forfeit our happiness because we say the following: I would be happy if I had blah, blah, blah. Or people say, oh, I just wanted to make you happy. Oh, that makes me happy. My wife says that all the time. She'll say, buying a purse makes me happy. And in essence, what that is doing is it causes the person to forfeit their own like already innate happiness at the expense of having to have something to give it to them, whether it's like having somebody love them or the relationship they want or the $1 million they don't have, blah, blah, blah. And it's not really about that. You can cultivate that. And so, for example, exercise increases, getting into like a state where you're really feeling good, you're doing something for yourself. It doesn't have to be a specific type of, it doesn't have to be just running. It could be something that you do physically that you enjoy. It increases the release not only of anandamide, but also the sensitivity of the receptors to anandamide. So what does that mean from a chemical standpoint? Is the receptors require less anandamide to become activated. So by me doing things that are good for me, I make my body more susceptible to it. It's almost like a positive feedback loop. The more you do things that feel good, the more you're receptive to the feeling of well-being. It goes to what I talked about last week with the law of attraction. The law of attraction is reflected right there chemically. I do things, and I'm changing myself genetically, chemically, the way my body's responding makes me more sensitive to the things that I want. But if I do the opposite, now I'm focused on tuning into negative states of being. I'm angry, I'm depressed, or what have you, then that's going to change my chemistry to make me more susceptible. Almost like my brain, like a radio station, I start to tune into the FUD network, the negative network, what have you. So it's interesting how this happening. By the way, this happens with everything. When I'm in training myself memory-wise, I can strengthen my memory in the same way. It happens on a genetic, and then it trickles into a biochemical state, a physiological state that is measured throughout your body. And so another thing is interesting, and this goes back to let's not forfeit our happiness is, for example, there's another example, get manipulated. That may sound very provocative, but what I'm meaning by get manipulated is like getting a massage or the chiropractor, which I recommended to this person who reached out to me who's taking a break from the space. Getting manipulated allows me a couple of things. Become aware of where I'm holding energy and storing it to the point where it causes pain and toxicity. And two, it allows me to get into a state where I'm more likely to secrete positive biochemistry, where I'm able to, for example, reduce cortisol, the stress hormone, where I increase serotonin, like a mood kind of chemical, or dopamine, the pleasure, motivation kind of chemical. It is not that the massage did this. It is that I chose during that moment to get into, to kind of almost like withdraw from my day-to-day activity, from what I do normally. I break the pattern, the programs that I'm normally running on, and I switch into a different state. And the therapist, by manipulating me and pressing and helping me feel good, it allows me to stay in a different program. By being in a different program, it allows my body to breathe. It gives my consciousness space, and it opens the door now to me secreting something else, a different chemistry that changes me at a genetic level, not my DNA sequence, but what I get out of my DNA. And then, of course, look at this. Not surprisingly, osteopathic manipulations boost anandamide levels. By how much? Nearly 200%. Specifically 168%, according to this study. Of course, if you want anything, any reference, what have you, let me know in direct message. I can shoot you some stuff. So imagine what other therapies do. Treatments like chiropractic, massage therapy, physical therapy. By the way, I may be a master at many things. I take care of myself. I pride myself in being a well-oiled machine. However, I do get osteopathic manipulations. I have a guy, an amazing guy here locally, as my chiropractor, as well as he's kind of like an investment guru. So we always have like really interesting conversations. And I have a guy that does cupping and really, really good at like massage and kind of athletic massage therapy. And so what this is doing is it's really getting me into a different state. Again, it is not selfish to take time for yourself. Take that time and nurture yourself. Break the patterns that are ruling you. Oh, I see, I think a little Dippy's friend there. Nice to see you. Thanks to anybody who has joined. All right. So another thing is oxytocin. You may be asking what the heck is oxytocin? You may know this if you've had children, and you maybe read like What to Expect When You're Expecting. You may have heard of oxytocin. It's interesting. It's called the love hormone, and it's actually related to the birthing process. What is the greatest act of love but giving birth? That's why you should always love and honor any female, especially your mother, because they gave you when you couldn't give to yourself. So So it plays an important role in pregnancy, and not surprisingly, it can really, this is why females often suffer from postpartum depression, because they go from this almost like high state, which pregnancy can induce, this expectation, this feeling like you're creating life is within you. That must be an amazing experience. I'm obviously not a female, I've never been pregnant, but I experienced it through my wife when she gave birth to our two kids. I can see it within her. This is why falling in love can feel so good. Like that first love or that excitement when the relationship is fresh. If you want the relation, if you're having relationship issues, I'm not going to be teaching now relationship, but one of the things is recapture that early moment. Your partner deserves to feel that bliss, that kind of falling in love all over again, that is triggered by an increase again in what? Anandamide. And probably other neurochemicals as well, dopamine and endorphins for pain. This is why when a female is pregnant, she may say, when she's giving in labor, she may say it hurts like hell. But if it were not for the inundation of well-being chemicals that she is being inundated with, it would hurt 100 times more. That's how powerful this chemistry is, that the birthing process, which should be something that no human can tolerate, this chemistry allows the woman to go through it and give birth and endure pain that is probably the greatest pain that a human would feel when living. So it's a very interesting how this can occur, as well as it's interesting. If you are in this state more, you will tolerate other painful experiences. Let me give you an example. My dad passed away when I was very young, but I had already been cultivating this at a young age. I've been doing this probably for well over 20 years. So when I decided to do this, I decided to give this to the NFT crypto space, and I'm committed 100% to build what I'm building and to teach this to people. And so when I lost him, I didn't react like a normal, like what you would say, quote unquote, a normal person would. All my family members were crying, falling apart. But because I was in a different state, it allowed me to transcend the pain that we often feel, which is typically not empathetic. It's usually more self-centered. You're not thinking about the other person. You're thinking about you, your loss, not their experience. And therefore, it really is a state that you can cultivate that actually allows you to transcend multiple forms of pain, not just physical. It allows you also to be more patient with others. This is why people have practiced, let's say, yoga and advanced meditative practice, where they get into that state that we talked about earlier, that brainwave state. They're in a different brainwave state more commonly, allowing them to deal with difficult people or difficult circumstances. So again, take that time. I promise you, the time away. If you build a company and you have people working the same under a roof, have them take time for themselves. Build a culture where people can take breaks to heal. They will be 10 times more productive, if not more. And flow state research has shown this to be true. You want people to be in a flow state, not the crap that many places do, which is to have people in a almost like a mental disease state, stress and anxiety, or depressed, frustrated, angry. All right, so again, physical touch, important. Oh, not to mention other ways to boost oxytocin, and thus anandamide as well. I mentioned many of these already: yoga, meditation, listening to the right music, whether it's binaural beats, like go to Spotify and type binaural beats, listening to like natural sounds, whether it's in real nature or just like, through audio. All of these things really help. Oh, and of course, demonstrating empathy and love to others. By the way, when I do spaces like this also boosts this kind of state of well-being. I notice it. When I end this space, I notice myself almost like bursting with love. Like I'm talking to my kids differently. I'm more loving with my wife. I'm just more relaxed overall. I'm telling you, go to any psychiatrist and ask them, have you ever had anybody come to you not feeling good because they're being charitable and empathetic? Nobody. Giving, loving others is the most healing thing that you could ever do. 100%. If you focus on others, the world will be at your feet. Absolutely. You will have more wealth than anybody who has all the money in the world. Trust me, that I know for a fact that I am wealthier than the wealthiest people on this planet. Most of those people suffer and live lonely lives. Even if you see them showboating, why do they showboat? Because they lack. They have a lack of. And that happens to a lot of people. Money does not buy happiness. So make sure you know that's something that you cultivate, that you have within you. Don't forfeit your happiness. Don't make it contingent on anything. Another actually interesting thing, which many of you will like, more dark chocolate. So, and I love dark chocolate actually. Um, I'm not a fan of chocolate. I mean, somebody may not be a fan of dark chocolate if they've made their palate more on the more sugary, more kind of milk-based white chocolate, or the lighter chocolate. But dark chocolate contains chemicals that boost anandamide, again by blocking the enzyme that reduces anandamide's activity, and therefore it indirectly stimulates the endocannabinoid system. This is actually pretty amazing that whoever built nature, because nature was built, it's intelligent design, and we can talk about that some other point. I've mentioned it in other spaces. Whoever built that was extremely intelligent. They knew how to create a system that sustained a state of well-being, bliss, and higher consciousness for all eternity. But for reasons I'm not going to get into, humanity cycles through highs and lows. Civilizations rise and civilizations fall. And when we fall, we really fall hard. And we forget all of the things from that higher age, only to rediscover them again like we are starting now. So dark chocolate is another one. You want to also, I mean, I'm not saying eat a lot of dark chocolate and start becoming, like eating pounds of dark chocolate, but it's more of an experience. It's, another one that's very interesting also from nature, because remember, dark chocolate comes from a specific plant, the nut of that plant. And so it contains the food of the plant and the food of life. That's what the nut is. There's a specific way in which you eat seeds, legumes, which I won't talk about now. But if you're interested, we can do something like that later. And so another one interesting from nature is truffles. Very, very high-end. Truffles are not necessarily a practical way of boosting anandamide because it's very expensive. But research has shown that anandamide, along with other enzymes in the endocannabinoid system, are found actually in truffles. And so truffles are almost like a way in which we put into our body a state of well-being. Of course, I've talked about this in another space in terms of like sacred plants. There are natural plants, mushrooms, for example, that will change your chemistry towards higher consciousness so that your nervous system vibrates at a frequency that is higher than the one that you are in right now, allowing you to experience realms of consciousness that you're not aware of, where there are living beings just like here that are wanting to help you. A lot of wisdom, a lot of creativity, a lot of beautiful experiences. There's sacred places that I go to that I've created with my own consciousness that don't exist on Earth. And one day maybe I'll be able to take one of you there on that voyage, but it requires the right student to be in the right state of mind to take that voyage. And so this suggests that anandamide may not be the only trigger to this biological effect of bliss, because truffles have other endocannabinoids. This is why like CBD supplementation is so useful, because it has some of these other CBG and CBN. It has a whole bunch of other different variants that all work synergistically. This is why the pharmacological model of extracting one thing and nuking you with it doesn't work. This holistic medicine is meant to be synergistic. It works complementary with each other. You need to attack your body. Well, that attack is probably not the right word. You need to nurture your body in a multidimensional way through different aspects. So that's what I teach in like a nutritional masterclass. All right. So again, remember the presence of anandamide increases the presence of anandamide is not the only thing. So you might instead, it may be that this may have been developed as a way of tempting animals to eat the truffles and thus produce the release not just of their spores to propagate them, but also to boost feelings of well-being. So this is the model that has been proposed where our awakening or the sustaining of our higher consciousness is nurtured by nature. So imagine if you have like a primitive civilization, we've descended back into darkness as humans, and you have a primitive hunter-gatherer civilization. They find these, they eat these, it boosts their state of well-being, their state of connection, their empathy, their higher consciousness. It opens the door to new technologies that they may have lost, and they can recapture them. This is why many people have come up with really creative insights under certain sacred plants, whether it's a very important landmark book or a scientific discovery, whatever it may be. Let's see. And of course, which I teach in other programs, I mentioned this, learning how to harness your chemistry by learning how to convert stress into flow, which I'm not going to talk about now because we're running now to the end of this, but it's something that I have taught in this space before. If you've not heard me talk about it, then I'm more than happy to do a space on that or a Discord event or something of that sort. All right, let's wrap it there. I'll take any questions. If anybody wants to come up, share anything, by all means, you're welcome for anything. People, don't, hopefully I didn't fill the entire space and there's nothing left to add. But maybe that's when it's good. All right, as I'm having a little bit of dark chocolate, oddly enough, not on purpose though. I just had it there. I forgot when I was doing that, the dark chocolate actually does it. All right, last call. Again, remember, anything that you would want me to talk about, I'm telling you, almost anything that you can think of, I'll probably be able to give you a spaces, a masterclass, what have you, especially when it comes to this. So let me know. Oh, somebody's coming up. Let's see. Luminance. Oh.
Hey, yeah, thank you so much. This was such a powerful talk, a lot of great wisdom that you shared. I'm really grateful. My question is about different brainwave states. I guess I missed the part where you were talking about them. I came in a little late, but I'm curious if you could talk about the different states and what types of maybe activities are best suited for different states, or what types of meditation get you into different brainwave frequencies.
Sure. So you can think of it almost like a radio station. There's low frequency and there's high frequency. There's certain high frequencies that are actually beneficial, brainwave states that are beneficial, that go beyond what you're normally in. What you're normally in is when your brain is active, you're attentive to the outer world. You call that the beta brainwave activity. However, your brain in beta is working well, but it's not optimized. This is why you hear the saying of you don't use most of your brain. It's not necessarily just at an atomic level where you're trying to connect different parts of the brain, but it also has to do with brainwave activity coherence. As I move into a more sleepy state, or the state that we associate with lucid dreaming, where I'm almost like half asleep, half awake. If you take a nap during 2 to 6 p.m., you're more likely to have an out-of-body experience or lucid dreaming because your brain, your nervous system's activity peaks during 2 time windows, including that one. And if I allow myself to let go, it gets me into a different brainwave state. So I've done spaces before on sleep and how to lucid dream more. I'm more than happy to do that at some other point in the future again, if you're interested. But some of these may actually be when we post them on Spotify as part of the podcast, the Shattering the Taboo podcast. So a brainwave state that you could say is higher than beta. But normally when you feel stressed out and anxious, that would be high beta. It's like your brainwave activity starts to go up. You become a lot more agitated, but your brain is not working in synchrony. You're out of coherence, is what it means. If I start to tune into a more inner state, I maybe close my eyes or I connect with nature. I go to a forest and I sit down. It starts to immediately change my brainwave activity. The sounds, the cues that nature provides through my senses actually change my brainwave activity. It moves me into a more dreamy-like state, this alpha state. If I were to go deeper than that, if I'm able to master deeper states of meditation, let's say, or somehow I find myself awakening in dream, but I'm not awake yet. I'm not fully awake in my body. I may be in the theta state. That's the state that you've associated with like a dream state, a deeper state of sleep. If you're fully unconscious and you're not in theta, you would be in delta. And eventually you can get to the point where that brainwave activity reaches 0. And you would say, what the heck happens there? That means that the brain has no activity. In fact, if you were to do that consciously, you go into a almost like catatonic state that looks like death, where you have actively vacated your energy and consciousness out of your nervous system, but at a higher center. I from my experience, I haven't been able to research this yet, but from my experiences through the pineal gland, that's why the pineal has always been associated with this type of kind of practice, this kind of spiritual enlightenment, inner realization, what have you, because people are concentrated there. That's why I usually say concentrate on the space in between your eyebrows. You're concentrating on your pineal gland, the one that releases the chemical that will switch you into a higher state of consciousness, but we normally do not activate that. Remember, we've talked about this whole spaces, the chemistry of consciousness, the chemistry of bliss. It is all a continuous spectrum, but I choose to be awake in the worst state possible normally. Why not choose to be awake in the most beautiful and pleasant state of all? Because the problem is we think of like kind of dream spiritual states as being like withdrawn from the world, because most people are asleep and unconscious during those moments. I've gotten myself accustomed to ending the day crashing, and the moment that alarm sounds or I wake up, I immediately grab my phone, I get going, go, and I then train myself to either be all on or off. I've never met this happy medium, this kind of yin-yang approach, bringing myself into harmony so that I can enjoy being conscious in a better state of being, which is not the beta state. And so if you look at kids, young kids, typically earlier than 7, they're not in a beta state. They're more in a subjective, really open, hypnotic, suggestive state of alpha, even theta. This is why if you have kids, you have to be very careful what you say around them, how you treat them, because they take in stuff more. And what happens is, if I've had a traumatic experience, a painful experience, it will cause me to close up and want to be in a more beta state, a more resistant state that causes stress. I'm less sensitive and I'm going to be all bottled up, and it's going to be a really painful experience. Trauma can cause us to really close and then not allow us to really tap into these different brainwave states. So eating the right way, thinking the right way, taking time, listening to good music, being in the company of people that inspire you, people that love you, even being in the arms of a loved one, whether it's a mother, a father, a partner, a best friend, whatever it may be, somebody that just holds you, that actually has been shown to neutralize stress, to reset you, and to kind of like really calm you. And so all of these things help. But some of them, in a sense, are crutches. I've said it before. Don't forfeit this state. Don't make it contingent on A, B, or C. This needs to happen. That needs to happen. I need to have this. Make sure that it is something that you own, that you express at all times. It's not contingent on the outer world. I tell this to students, to people all the time. It's the following. If this world, the world that we call as the world, the physical world that we live in, if it were to cease existing right now, instantly, it would not cause a single ripple within me. I know that I exist, that I am eternal, and therefore it doesn't affect me. And so in the same way, you can cultivate a state of being where nothing affects you in the negative state. You are in bliss, in peace, and tranquility at all times. And this is a state that once you cultivate it and you master how to be in it, you never lose it. I don't care how many forms you take, you will never lose it. It carries over across lifetimes. You could say across forms. You will take it forever. And so it's something that becomes infectious as well. If you wanted to change your household, change yourself first. You want to change your society, change yourself first. You want to change the world, change yourself first. Never look outside of you and complain about A, B, or C, or so-and-so doing this or that without evaluating whether it exists within you. Because if I see somebody who's homeless, who's a drug addict, who's a criminal, whatever they may be, whatever choice they may have made that got them to where they were, I do not know one thing. If I had walked in their shoes, if I had their parents, their struggles, their pain, if I would be the same, worse, or better, I don't know. Therefore, I can't criticize that. I only know that they need help. And as an empathetic being, you try to serve and help people as best as you can. So keep that in mind. Try to put yourself in the best state possible. Luminous, I don't know if I went too much of a long tangent there.
Yeah, man, that's all great. I definitely resonate with all of this. And I feel like exploring the mastery of brainwave states for specific needs in the moment is a very powerful meditative practice that I feel like leads to personal mastery. You talked a lot about heart coherence or coherence in general.
Yes.
My work and the project that I'm creating right now is in facilitating heart coherence. And curious if you've heard of any of the work from Dan Winter and the ability for heart coherence and the firing in the heart to cascade at the phi ratio to actually evoke states of bliss.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I teach a meditation designed to do that, that also boosts your immune system. It can enhance your natural killer cells, your cells that fight off like virally infected cells, cancer cells, things of that nature. You know, it's very interesting. Again, it's the same thing we talked about throughout this space is when we get very centered, we get in a particular state. But typically, this type of meditation, at least when I teach it, I try to get people connected with their emotions, especially the emotion of gratitude, of openness, really focusing on opening and really allowing the experience of just being alive to really let it sink in. And in that moment, it draws my awareness to my heart. And the heart is unlike the brain. The brain tends to be bipolar. It has two branches of the autonomic nervous system. It has two hemispheres. It has, one side that's dominant and the other side is dominant with something else. Whereas the heart isn't like that. It's almost like a unison. And when I bring my brain and my heart into coherence and I center myself in gratitude and forgiveness, it really changes the game in terms of my overall experience in that moment. And because, again, it's like the massage example that I gave earlier, I am just getting myself into a state that is associated, again, it's like a positive feedback loop where it's changing my brainwave state, changing my chemistry, which feeds back to my genes expression, which changes my chemistry further, which reinforces that state, and it makes me more apt. This is why when I start to master, for example, being in the flow state, I can more easily get into the flow state. The more I learn to get in it, the easier it is to get in it. The more I cultivate a positive mindset, the easier it is to get into a positive mindset. It all goes down at a physical level to a positive feedback mechanism that's already pre-programmed into us that we're just activating. We're staking claim to something that we've had from birth. For some reason, the system has made us think that we're deficient, dysfunctional, broken. And in many respects, we are. And we need to accept that. And the moment I accept that I'm not perfect is the moment I'm going to be like taking the steps necessary to perfect myself. So I said at the beginning, never stop, never cease the pursuit of perfection. Like I think Alexa says that pursuit of perfection is live in that sense. Never think that you have perfected yourself. In my book, We're Tuning to God, and I have another really inspiring story about that, about a guru who had a disciple that always criticized, the other disciples were like, man, how does he tolerate this disciple? He's always criticizing him, putting him down, putting him in his place. And when the disciple passes away through an accident unexpectedly, the guru mourns in a way that really surprised the disciples. They couldn't understand it. When they approached the guru, they overheard the guru say how much he lamented the loss of this disciple because he was the only one that taught him an important lesson, which was that no matter how much the guru had thought that he had progressed, he still had a ways to go. He was still a little bit vain. He was still a little bit lazy in certain things, maybe attached to certain things over others. Whenever you think you've gotten all the way, there's always a little bit more you can do. That's why I always try to put myself in a room where I'm at the bottom of the totem pole, where I'm looking up at other people, and through my own admiration and my humility, I open the door to their grace, to their light, what they're providing the world to help us grow and advance. All right. Anybody else want to add anything, including Luminance? Hey, dude, if you want to, I'm following you. Send me a direct message and maybe we can connect. And if you want, we could do a spaces together for my podcast. And it could be on that topic. I can interview you. You can talk to me about what you're doing. And we can talk about heart coherence and maybe, I don't know if you have experience in maybe guiding, like a little short one, like a 5-minute, we could do a guided one. I think people would like that if you're up for it.
Yeah, I'd be honored to do that and happy to guide a meditation. I feel like that's the best way to sync up before a podcast anyway.
Awesome. Oh, perfect. Then let's do it. Yeah, let's connect. And if you follow me, I mentioned this earlier, I'm launching an FT project. So it's going to be about this. So what you've heard me do is like the little tip of the iceberg of what this project is going to be about. It's like a lifelong journey. And my goal is to try to be as best as I can like a role model, a guru of sorts for whoever's in that NFT project. It will start very intimate. The OGs are going to get free mints and then, grow it organically from there. And that's going to be coming in the near future. So if you follow me, You can be one of the first ones to get in. If I remember you because I've done stuff with you, it's like it helps. Definitely helps. You don't realize that the more you kind of reach out, the more you connect. It's all about network effects. The more people really remember you, it really makes a difference in the space. It's all about us working together. It's not about me. And so it's not about one NFT project being better than others. Those that do that are really going to probably dry themselves out. The ones that are collaborating, working together, building like one of my like Chance down there, one of my favorite, really one of my favorite projects, the CyberConks. They're all about that. It's about communities, about working together, building something bigger. So, connect, reach out.
I have a quick question because you were talking about binaural beats, and I've always researched that. So say I'm just going to give an example for like depression. Is there a certain, I know there's always like a number and then HZ. If you could clarify what that meant, but are there certain numbers you should go with? And then my question after that is, how do you maximize the sound of it? Like, do you need to wear certain headphones or can you just play it on your phone? That was my question about binaural beats.
Awesome. I noticed I wasn't following you. So I've seen you before. I think I've seen you before, right? In some of my spaces. Yeah. So I'm giving you a follow.
Oh, good. I come from the Sun Gens community, so hey.
No, yeah. I saw you like originally I had like your little Sun Gens profile pic.
Yeah.
So yes. So the HC is hertz. It's like the measure of frequency. So typically what I do is there's actually a useful tool is I sometimes when I feel like maybe I've overdone it a little, I'll put headphones on. You want like having good quality headphones probably does matter. The best headphones really are like the Beat, what do they call the Beats, right? The ones that go around the ear, because the ones that go more into your eardrum are the kind of like the ones that Apple sells are not necessarily that bad because they don't go into the ear canal. You don't want to use the ones that go into the ear canal because the sound needs to expand. And if you don't allow it to expand, it really gets delivered into your inner ear more strongly. So you could do damage to your ear.
I didn't know that. Yeah. I don't think a lot of people know that.
Yeah. It damages your hair cells. This is why people lose their hearing, is because the loud sounds, and it could particularly even be the type of work that they do, or if they're listening, with headphones to loud music, it starts to damage what are known as the hair cells in your inner ear that transduce the mechanical energy of sound into an electrochemical signal that your nervous system can interpret. So they actually like start to degrade to the point where you can't hear well because your inner ear's hair cells are damaged. So what you want to do is you want to have it at a you have to like practice it. Like I would do it like just seated. Sit like if you're going to meditate. Go on Spotify and like type binaural beats. And the frequency right now really doesn't matter. I mean, most of them don't vary that much. They may say alpha. Most of them are in the alpha range. They may even reach theta. But remember, alpha would be like you just woke up or you're lucid dreaming or you're in a class and you're feeling kind of bored and you're just kind of daydreaming. That's alpha. If you're going deeper, it would be theta. So I probably wouldn't go theta if I'm a beginner. I would go alpha first. And you go and you type in like brainwave frequencies in hertz or something like that. And you can
really quickly, when you say for beginners, is this due to like difficulty or ability to grasp, to really experience it? Or does it have to do with the intensity of, going to sleep? Or could you clarify that really quickly?
Yeah. It's if I'm not used to, because I talked about this earlier, is the fact that we've entrained our brain not to be able to be conscious in deeper states. So if I start going into alpha, I may get too relaxed, and then I go, without realizing, I go into theta and I fall asleep. So This is why meditation can be so challenging, is because I'm so used to being in beta, this kind of active, external, attentionally driven, do state, that when I try to move into a relaxed state, I start to feel drowsy and sleepy. So what you want is probably to go into like a slower beta, and then you go into a higher alpha, and then you slow it down, and you keep pushing yourself into theta. Eventually, as you entrain yourself with the binaural beats, you could let go of the binaural beats and just sit and meditate, and then be able to get into a deeper state. The trick is to like play around with allowing yourself just to the brink of passing out, and then stir yourself awake. Get yourself like awake. You know, when you're like about to pass out, and you're almost like the TV may be on, and you're almost like hearing, but you're not there. You're in this other realm. You're starting to go, you're in the in-between realm of the outer, the physical versus the inner kind of spiritual realm. And then all of a sudden, you kind of wake yourself, you perk yourself up, like, oh, I got to wake up. So it's like playing around with that, because meditation and sleep are almost the same thing. It's just meditation is almost like training to let go. Like imagine yourself as this disembodied being, like this hand that's just grabbing the body, and you have to learn to let go of the body and withdraw. That's what you do at night, but you do it unconsciously every night. And you have to learn how to consciously get into that deeper state. Because one thing that I can also promise you is that if you ever experience dreamless sleep, the period that you typically get into between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m., that deep sleep, if you experience that consciously, it is the greatest gift you could ever give yourself. You will experience yourself without any barriers. The true self, the real you, will be experienced in that moment. You will feel complete, nothing, no absence whatsoever. You won't feel like you know who you are, your name, person, your possessions, none of that matters. You're almost like empty, but at the same time whole. It's a strange experience. It's like a very almost like polarizing yet unifying experience. And so only experience during that state, going into alpha, theta, and then delta. And then you transcend the body, you transcend the mind, and now you rest exactly the way that you are. And it's a really interesting state. Binaural beats are a tool, you could say, to help you learn how to get your brain into those brainwave states. Why? Because through sound, this has been done historically. We learned this from ancient civilizations, and indigenous people even do this, is they've learned to use sound, even in specific instruments, to change your brainwave activity. The brain hears certain sounds, and then it shifts the way that the brain is almost like activating. It becomes a lot more coherent. Another way that's great to do it is being in contact with nature. But I'm not saying nature in Manhattan and you hear the cars in the background. No, I'm talking about like really withdrawn from nature in a big forest or something of that sort. And you go to Yellowstone and you just go camping and you get away. That type of nature, it really is very healing and can really change your brain activity immediately, for sure. You can easily get into an alpha state. Doing something that you find relaxing will do that as well. I'll sit outside, let's say, and maybe I'm listening to the birds, even if I'm like with a loved one, just talking, having a drink or whatever, a glass of wine, let's say. Doing something that I kind of mentally associate with relaxation can get me into an alpha as well. Let me see here. I know somebody had a question.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Anytime. Dr. Snow? Is it Snow?
Yeah, what's going on, man?
Hey, how are you, sir?
I just love everything you've been talking about, and just wanted to kind of add a little tidbit.
Sure.
Where you were talking about before, when you were talking about mushrooms and kind of elevating your consciousness to a different state of, being in state of mind. I was just kind of thinking about it from a computer perspective. Like if we did go back to that kind of Neanderthal kind of society, we would find these mushrooms again. It's kind of like a cheat code or an upgrade to the system, right? In a way.
Exactly. Yes. This is why some people talk about. I'm blanking right now on his name, but he's very famous in the psychedelic space. He's not alive anymore. His name will come to me. But he was, I think, the first one to talk about how the evolution of mankind was due to psychedelics. That when you descend back into darkness, the primitive human beings awakened again through their interaction with that sacred medicine. It's what it basically is a program. It's in nature, we have already programmed. This is literal math. When you study nature, you see this, and I'm not going to get into the math right now, but it's literal math and technology you see embedded in nature. And when you extract that information, it's almost like you have a computer, but that computer has everything already. And as we evolve, we start to extract new things from it. This is why consciousness society evolves in this way as well. Why we went from a Newtonian world now into a quantum one. Because consciousness changed, and now humans were able to extract things that were already there. Einstein, when he came up with the theory of relativity, that wasn't a new creation. It was already there. It already existed. He was able to extract it from this system. And so natural medicines allow you to kind of like tap into that to some extent. It can be controversial for some people because of stigmas. We talked about that in the Shattering the Taboo podcast, how historically why this is. But the fact remains that it is being shown now by science to be beneficial in many respects, and it has to be studied further and used because it can benefit mankind.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think all the knowledge that we have, like you're saying, is always there to be tapped into, like getting into that meditative kind of theta or beta state you were talking about, accessing the Akashic records and really getting into those deeper streams of consciousness where you can find ideas of maybe the future relating to that vast multiverse or quantum realm that we're kind of diving into now with the age of Aquarius. It's just, you see it right now with the shift in just blockchain technology and what everyone's trying to create and creating a better future for everybody.
Oh yeah, and that's why last week when we did the episode on the law of attraction, I discussed this. Anything and everything that you think you are or you will be is happening right now. All the possibilities. You're experiencing multiple dimensions of life. You're just choosing to be aware of just one. Anything that you want in life, you could have, but you need to tune into it like a radio station. What are you tuning into? This is why I always say, you want to grow, you want to evolve, kind of like that spiritual development, that personal growth. Be in the company of enlightened ones that will help tune you into a different wavelength. It could be through their written work, it could be through some space like this, through a recording that they left behind, maybe an audible or something like that. To what are you tuning into? Is it getting you where you want to go? And last week we talked about, do you know where you want to go? So planning everything that matters a lot.
Yeah, thought is very powerful, and putting emotion behind it is, that the whole other thing, which I'm pretty sure you probably talked about in this space or in other ones. But yeah, believing it with everything you got,
Exactly.
Knowing where you want to go, knowing where you need to go, knowing where maybe right now will take you. It'll, just segments of your life. You don't have to know to get to where you need to go.
Yeah, and I talked about this earlier. I don't know if you were here earlier when I talked about the positive feedback loops. that you see even at a
No, it wasn't.
neurochemical level. When I do
Yeah.
something that gets me closer to the state that I want or the goal that I want, it is almost as if things change and other things happen to facilitate me acquiring that which what I want. That's the whole idea of a law of attraction is I have to create the frequency that then draws the help, the right people, the right circumstance. I've talked about to a number of people that have been like that, have had this experience, and maybe Alex can maybe chime in on this. Maybe he's had this experience. When you get in alignment with your dharma, your purpose, it's almost as if all of a sudden things just start happening where there's just like less obstacles and more aids. And the mentality that you take also matters, because if you have like a more Zen-like approach, then there are no obstacles. You just see the goal. And the obstacles are just things in the way that you just kind of glide by. And so almost like you're doing a hurdles race and you're just going at full speed and you just go over the hurdles and you without a stumble. I mean, we may stumble, but we get back up. All right. Anybody else? Last thoughts? And thank you, Dr. Snow. Is it Snow, Dr. Snow, or what should I call?
Yeah, Dr. Snow. That's just that's my handle. My name's Dylan.
Oh, Dylan, nice. Is that a dippy, right? That's a dippy?
Yeah, it's a dippy. I don't think this one was even minted, so I kind of just snatched them up and took them for myself.
Hot. No, I had dippies actually. I sold like at the top, and it's a really cool community. I was thinking like buy the dip now, because so many good projects are like really at good buys.
Yeah, because the other side mint just happened, so that was atrocious.
That sucked the life of every
project.
No, I had 2 projects that I was gonna mint that unfortunately they look really good too. So it's kind of like sad. If you like, I talked about this earlier, like if you take that approach of like building that network the wrong way and the mint fails, boy, you're in for no comeback usually. But if you build it the other way, kind of from the ground up, strong community, the good foundations, if you really blow up, if the mint goes well, then great. But you're more resistant to the lulls. Like I find that good communities during the bear, they keep building this. Doesn't really matter. They don't care about the floor price.
Yeah, like the doodles or the dippies are pretty good, solid community too.
Yeah, I'll have to go back and check them out. I did like them when the time that I was there. Good vibe.
Oh yeah, very good vibe. Campfire sessions.
Yeah. Maybe I can. If you're interested, I don't know. Maybe talk to the team and maybe I can do like a little event for them or something, like a little free event for them, a little workshop or spaces together. If they wanted to, like, even come on and talk a little about the project, I'm more than happy to have them on my podcast.
Yeah, I'll have to get in contact with the founders. I'm not too high up in the
but
chain,
maybe reach out to the team. I'll see if I can like reach out to them as well, because I think they would vibe with that. They'll like that.
Oh yeah, most definitely.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. Anybody else? Any of the Sungens?
Oh yeah. I just wanted to say I really appreciate these spaces, Bebe Chez. Thanks for holding these. I get a lot of knowledge and really good insight when you hold these. And I just wanted to say, I think the name of the doctor or the scientist that you were trying to name earlier that came up with some of the natural medicine studies, I think his name was Terence McKenna.
Oh, Terence McKenna, yes, exactly. Yeah, his brother now is taking kind of the mantle of the McKennas, and he does a lot of research and work in the space. Great work in that field.
Definitely. Yeah, thanks again for holding these. It's always a pleasure.
Oh, you're very welcome. All right, let's wrap it there. We've gone really long.
Let's wrap it up. I want to say real quick, Chez, thank you for holding down the vibe, man. That's all I got to say.
No, you're welcome. I enjoy it too. That's the thing. Like, I feel like I was like born for this, and I kind of like was working. This why, like, if anybody's listening here and you're wanting to build something, look, it doesn't come overnight. Like, I never had sleepless nights though. I just did it because I love to help people, and if it was just one person, that was fine with me. I remember I did my first retreat ever. My artist stress healing retreat was here in Miami, and we lost a lot of money because we only had like a few people. I was trying to bring them in. I was new, and it didn't really matter because it was all about like just serving. I healed two people at that event, one of chronic migraines and another one of infertility. And you really think that I'm going to be thinking about the money that I didn't make? I could care less. And I kept building. And even though there were people in my life that told me I was wasting my time, that I wasted my degree, that I should get a real job, whatever it may be, all the negative things that people may tell you, ignore the noise and continue to pursue your passion, because at the end of the day, nothing else matters. If you're not doing what you love, you're not living. And if you're doing what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. And with that, we will end this episode. I love you all, and have a beautiful evening or day wherever you may be. Peace out.